What's going on, guys? So today I have a Witchcrafter deck profile, and this is a deck I've been playing with more casually over the last month or so, having a lot of fun with the deck, testing out different things, and Blazing Vortex came out and gave this deck a pretty sizable boost, I think. Not too many like specific cards, but I just think overall, with the addition of a very powerful spell card, most obviously the pot, it's gotten a little bit of a boost, right? Because especially this version I'm playing, because there's two main versions of Witchcrafter, and I'll explain that more as I get into the deck profile. But yeah, I'm just going to run through the deck, my thoughts and opinions of the deck itself, and the list I've sort of come to build. And yeah, here we go. Starting off with 3 Shmieta. So if you don't know what Witchcrafters do, they all have, all the small Witchcrafters, the level 4 lowers, they have the same effect where for cost, you can tribute them and discard a spell to special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your deck, which is very good. And then they all have a different graveyard effect. Shmieta's arguably the best one because you can banish her to foolish any Witchcrafter card from your deck to the graveyard, which is very, very vital. It's essentially just like a +1 almost every time you use her, so she's very good for getting anything you need, and she's like the best starter, and she's the one we choose to maximize at 3. Then 2 Pittore. This one's very good. Because she can do like hand filtering. You can essentially trade like Witchcrafter cards that are gonna like plus at the end phase anyways to draw like real cards, either floodgates or good interacts. You can banish her to draw a card and then discard a Witchcrafter card. But if you don't have a Witchcrafter card, you have to discard your whole hand, which is tough, but she's very, very good for hand filtering and getting cards you need. And then 2 Jenny. So this one you can banish from your graveyard along with a Witchcrafter spell, and then she applies the effect of that spell. This is very good because it can essentially like be a second creation. It gets around the clause that you can only use one Witchcrafter spell effect per turn, right? So like if you use creation to search Jenny and then you pitch Jenny another spell, you can banish her to use creation again because it's Jenny's effect, not the spell's. But it also has a couple of very good niche interactions. Like say there's an Imperial Order face up, and you can't out it for whatever reason, but there's actually like this deck actually gets around Imperial Order very, very easy. But say Imperial Order is being a problem, you can banish Jenny and Draping from your graveyard, and then you can bounce Imperial Order anyways. So this deck actually plays around Imperial Order very nice, which is what I think is really good. It has going for it as a spell deck. But yeah, Jenny just a nice +1, and she can just be a lot of utility in one. She's an extender. She's just very, very good for the deck. And then I play 1 Poterier. So not every list plays this. In fact, I think most lists choose not to play her, which I think is strange because she is so, so good. Maybe it's because of the version of the deck I'm running, she seems to have a little more utility, or at least she's more viable more often. But even when she's not like using her effect engrave, her effect engrave is if you have no cards in your hand, you can add a Witchcrafter card from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty good. Again, like they're all just +1s except for Pittore, but she's designed to be a +1 as well. But also she's Earth, so you can make Alsa with her, which is very, very good this format. Alsa, just one of the most relevant Charmer extra deck monsters. And also, like, I'm running a Super Poly in this build, and you can like summon her and then Super Poly Infinitrack and her away, and that's happened like once for me, I think, but that's pretty funny. Like her attribute's very nice, and I think her effect's very, very good. But yeah, it's just 8 Witchcrafter monsters, small Witchcrafters, because I choose to play for the big ones 1 Madame Vare, 1 Heine, and 1 Aruru. So this is the lineup I choose to play. I know most people choose to play 2 Heine. I think that's completely fine, but personally, in my experience, I've just drawn these too many times, and they're like the only true bricks in the deck. You don't really want to draw these, you just kind of want to tutor them out. Okay, Aruru, of course, you kind of want to draw because she's like a pseudo hand trap, and she's very, very good for the deck, but you still really don't want to draw her over like seeing other cards, right? So I choose to minimize on the amount of bricks I'm playing, but these are your boss monsters. You just use your small ones to go into your big ones, and then this can discard a spell card to like blanket effect Veiler your opponent's board, as well as she has like attack and defense modulation based on the number of spells in your hand. Heine protects other spellcaster monsters from targeting, and she's essentially a Trident when you discard a spell. And Aruru can be like a compulse in the battle phase, or she can like recycle spells And she keeps recycling herself, which is very, very good. Yeah, I choose to play these 3 boss monsters. The fact that these two are lights and this is dark will actually become relevant because the attributes in this deck are actually pretty important for a couple of different cards. And next up, the only hand trap in the deck, I'm playing 3 Gamma and 1 Driver. I think this card's pretty self-explanatory in this deck because all of your little Witchcrafters tribute themselves as cost, right? So you tribute this as cost along with a spell card, and then if they ash, you now have no monsters on board. So you can special summon Gamma, negate the ash, your Witchcrafter resolves, and then you get Gamma, which is very, very good. But also this stops VFD, this stops Utopic Zexal, just a really, really strong card this format overall. Just stopping any hand traps in general. And yeah, it's just a very, very powerful card. And it's the one hand trap we choose to play more for space. You don't want to like crowd your hands with a bunch of like monsters in this deck. Because your Witchcrafters need spells in your hand to actually like work. So you need to be playing spells. Speaking of which, on to spells. 3 Pot of Prosperity. So I was playing Extravagance over this card before Blazing Vortex. And I think that is still a very viable option. So like if you can't afford Pot of Prosperity, Extravagance is an excellent like budget option you can play. I say budget. Extravagance is still, I'm pretty sure it's still like a $20-ish card. I'm not quite sure of that right now in this moment, but it's still very good. The extra deck in this deck is only semi-important, but it's important enough that I prefer Prosperity a lot. And because of the list I'm playing, Prosperity is vastly is not the right word. It's just infinitely superior to Extravagance. And yeah, this is just so good for seeing pieces, making sure you see your Witchcrafter monster, seeing certain floodgates or tech cards we choose to play, outs to your opponent's board, and most importantly, the main power card of the deck that I will get to in a bit. But yeah, 3 Pot of Prosperity, pretty standard. On to Witchcrafter spells. So Witchcrafter spells, if you don't know, and it's pretty much the entire gimmick of the deck. You can only use each effect of them per turn. One effect per turn. So they have 2 effects on the card. You can only use 1. They all do something, and then at the end phase, they can add themselves back to your hand. So you can end up like using them as like a resource and an like infinite advantage engine, which actually gives this deck a crazy grind game. I want to upload some live duels with this deck versus Sky Striker because it's kind of thematic. They're both like the big spell decks. And like they both can grind, and I've seen this deck make insane grinds, and it's because they can just keep adding themselves back, and you can use their effects every turn as long as you keep adding them back. But this one is a Reinforcements of the Army, adds any Witchcrafter monster from your deck to your hand, so that's very, very good, and we're going to maximize on this one so we can make sure we see a Witchcrafter monster. And then 2 Holiday. This is a monster reborn. It's very good for extending into your plays and making sure you get a monster out if like your normal summon gets negated or popped or anything like that. 2 Unveiling. This is a very good card because it sort of puts like a Miscellaneousaurus-esque effect. You use this and you special summon a spellcaster type monster from your hand, and then to give you the exact text, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of spellcaster monster effects for the rest of this turn. So it pretty much means you can do all your Witchcrafter stuff and any spellcaster monster stuff without fear of being interrupted. So it's very, very good, and it can get the big ones out of your hand and extend even further, which is great. Then 1 Draping. This is like a giant Trunade. You can bounce spells and traps equal to the number of Witchcrafter monsters you control. Very good for going for game or getting rid of problems. It's just a very, very good one of. And then 1 Buy Street and 1 Scroll. Honestly, I prefer Collaboration to Scroll, but Scroll does have like its uses. It's come up a couple of times where it helps me in like grind games versus like more casual decks, but also like Collaboration doesn't come up that often, so it's whether you play Scroll or Collaboration is really up to you. Buy Street, however, is mandatory. It's like one of the best cards in the deck. I've played 2 of it in some lists because it's so good, but yeah, Buy Street essentially gives you protection. Each of your Witchcrafter monsters gain like 1 time protection, so yeah, that's very, very powerful and can make sure your board states stay where they are, because your boss monsters, while they have cool effects to be like a Dryden or a blanket effect Veiler on your opponent's board, they have no built-in effect protection, so Buy Street is very important for that. And also while they're on the field, These actually return themselves to the field, not the hand. You can attribute them from the field instead of like discarding a spell for the effects of all your Witchcrafter monsters, which is very, very good. And now here is the big power card of the deck I choose to play. Not every list chooses to play this, and I'm going to have to go an explanation why I do. In fact, in the Witchcrafter, like, all the builds you see online or people giving opinions about the deck, the most, like, divisive topic is this card. And just to get on with it, it is 3 Spell Chronicle. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know what this card does, so I'm going to explain it. You activate it, and the cost is to discard your entire hand. And then you banish 5 spells and traps from your deck. I'm pretty sure it's spells and traps. Yeah, spell or trap cards from your deck. Any 5. And then each time your opponent activates a spell card, this card gets a Spell Chronicle counter. And you can remove 2 counters to have your opponent choose one of your banished spells or traps and then add it to your hand. So that seems like the worst gold sarcophagus you've ever read in your life, if you just think about it like that. But because of, I'm going to have to go a little bit ahead and explain Witchcrafter Patronus. This is a trap card that you can banish this from your graveyard to add back any number of your banished Witchcrafter spells with different names from your banished zone to your hand. So if you kind of see what's happening there instantly, you banish 5 Witchcrafter spells with this card, and then you just add them to your hand instantly on your opponent's turn, which means you can... I mean, it's just like such a mega plus. And the discard your entire hand means almost nothing to this deck in most game states, because you're discarding either Witchcrafter monsters that have effects in graveyard, or you're discarding Witchcrafter spells that come back to your hand at your end phase. So it never really feels terrible to have to discard your entire hand. Usually discard your entire hand means discard 1 card. This card can't be ashed, which is super, super good. But I guess why it's divisive when it seems that powerful, this is honestly, I think, the reason to play Witchcrafter, and I'm going to kind of explain why. People say it reduces the consistency, and before Pot of Prosperity, like, maybe you could say that. I can see, like, an argument for it. It's not, like, always good, because you have to see Shmieta or Patronus to make it viable, otherwise it's terrible, right? So I can, like, see that. I mean, at worst, it's a spell card, though, so I never really got that reference, but, here's the big thing that you have to keep in mind. Like, if you're going to play this deck against, like, if you just want to take it to locals, right? You're going to end up playing against Drytron players. You're going to end up playing against Zoo Eldritch. You're going to end up playing against meta decks that undeniably are a little bit more competitive than Witchcrafter. However, this is a card that is just so powerful that it can put you on their level. Like, being able to instantly +5, having all those resources instantly adding to your hand. This card is powerful enough in Witchcrafter, and only Witchcrafter, that it gives you an edge over your opponent. You can make, like, tier 2 decks seem weaker than you just because of how powerful this card is. Like, it generates so much advantage, so much resource, like, gain, and, yeah, it's just insanely powerful, and in my opinion, it's the reason to run the deck, and why I choose to run Spell Chronicle. That is a lot of explanation for 1 card, but it truly is, like, the deciding factor of what Witchcrafter deck you're playing, whether you're playing no Spell Chronicle or Spell Chronicle. And I just wanted to give my reasons why I play it and why I think it is the better way to run the deck. But it's just my opinion at the end of the day. You can run Witchcrafter with or without the card. I just think it's beyond bonkers, and I want to maximize on it. One reasoning, this is, like, again, one of the best cards in the deck. All your things are different levels, and you end up milling, like, Witchcrafter spells off of this card and getting super pluses, so that's what makes it so good. The only bad hit is, like, Driver, but usually if it hits, like, if they call 4 and it hits Shmieta, you're not even upset because she's going to get her grave effect anyways. And then I have some tech spell cards that are just one-ofs. 1 Secret Village of the Spellcaster, for very obvious reasons. It's like a turbo win floodgate for this deck if you're going first. 1 Super Polymerization. 1 Dark Ruler No More, and 1 Called by the Grave. So Called by the Grave is at 1, so less reason to explain it. It's just like you lose to Ash Blossom and several hand traps, so we want to run the Called by, and it's a spell. Like, it's a powerful spell, so at worst we can discard it for a Witchcrafter. Dark Ruler and Super Poly are for breaking boards. Super Poly is not, like, the best this meta, but because we're playing Verite Anaconda, there are many, many times that we can at least make something, like a Mud Dragon or anything like that. because Verity's ability to make things dark is very, very powerful. But also, each of your Witchcrafter monsters, you have all 6 attributes, so usually you can end up making Mud Dragon in some way. And then Dark Ruler, like if you go Dark Ruler no more and into Access Code Talker, you can break boards, right? So why like a bunch of 1-ofs? Well, one is Prosperity is just like very good in searching 1-ofs and making sure you have like certain tech cards you need, but also Spell Chronicle. So what you can actually do with this, if you're already like loaded on Witchcrafter spells, or you have like 1 or 2 in rotation already, you can banish like 4 Witchcrafter spells and 1 real spell. Patronus back all your Witchcrafter spells, and if they activate 2 spells, and you can just like add back a Dark Ruler no more or a Super Poly, which is like I just wanted a couple of very powerful targets you could banish off Spell Chronicle, just in case it comes up that I need a board break. They become like searchable, which is very, very cool. But again, at worst, they are spell cards. On to traps. 2 Patronus. So I kind of explained the banish effect of this one already, and like the main goal is to send this off Shmieta and get its effect with Spell Chronicle, but it's also just like a good draw. Because you can return a Spellcaster type monster, I'm pretty sure. Is it Witchcrafter or Spellcaster? My bad. Yeah, you can take a Spellcaster type monster in your grave or banish, send it back to your deck, and then add a Witchcrafter spell from your deck to your hand. Very, very good for the grind game because it puts back your Witchcrafter monsters as well as, you know, pluses you on a spell, and you can use that on each player's turn. So that's, if it stays on the board for like 2 or 3 turns, you've just plussed massively, but and then if they pop it, it has an effect in graveyard. So just very, very powerful trap card for the deck. And then 2 Summon Limit. So the reason I play cards like these 2 Summon Limit and this Secret Village of the Spellcasters is your end board turn 1 is either like Heine Ver or like Ver or Heine. It's not a very powerful end board. It ends on 1 to 2 interrupts. So with our Prosperity or just like naturally drawing them or Petore, we want to see like a floodgate that goes with it that can just like win the game. I'm not like maximizing on Secret Village because it is a very hard go first. But this deck can play through Summon Limit very, very easy, and it just dominates some decks. So if you can like make your board and flip Summon Limit, like you're in a good spot. Like you can definitely come out on top. So we just want to play a couple of powerful floodgates in the main deck so that we can stand up to the big bullies in the meta. So on to extra deck. It's not fully fleshed out. I have a couple of proxies, unfortunately, because the extra deck's actually pretty expensive, and I've gone on like a deck buying spree recently, at least in the past month or so, that has sort of made it to where I don't really want to spend too much more on like random extra decks when I usually just borrow the cards from my friends. So yeah, to run through, I'll give the proxies. So 1 Artemis, this is sometimes very important for putting Shmieta in your graveyard, so you can send Patronus. 1 Hida, 1 Alsa, and then a Charmer monster of your choice. I usually play Area because I think she's the cutest, so that's not like a real reason to run it. You can play the Wind one or the Water one, but yeah, you have like every attribute in your deck, so you can make these very easy, and these 3 cards are how you climb into your Selene. Very obviously this is Selene. In Selene, you're running a billion spells, so she makes sense. You can go into your access code talker. Yes, very, very good alternate art access code right here. But yeah, this is just very, very powerful. This whole engine is like one of the main reasons to have an extra deck in this deck. Then we run 2 Verte Anaconda. The second one, the extra deck is not very important in this deck, to be honest. Like a lot of games, you won't go into it at all. So Prosperity, you can run a couple of flex spots to just banish off of Prosperity. And I was running Extravagance before, so sometimes it just looks like this. But yes, Verte is for the Super Poly. And then, what in the world? That is incorrect. Okay, here we go. And then this is 1 Lambda or Lambda, however you want to pronounce it, just because we're running Gamma, and yes. Now, one of the most important cards in the extra deck, if not the most important card in the extra deck, is Chaos Ruler. So this card is insane for this deck. If you're using Gamma on your turn to negate Ash, you end up you're able to make a level 8 Synchro, and this is the one you want to make. Because not only, so its only real effect for us is usually going to be the Mill 5. When it's summoned, you excavate the top 5, and then you can add a light or dark monster from the revealed ones, which can be any of your Witchcrafter boss monsters, right? Because they're light and dark. That's why I said it would be relevant. later, and then you can also add Gamma, which is pretty cool. Most importantly, you can mill Witchcrafter spells, which can make less good hands turn into insane hands very, very quickly. And then he's just an extender, a 3k beater. He has an effect where he can reborn himself. He's a very, very good card for this deck. And another reason I think to play Gamma, because he's so good. And we have a bunch of Super Poly targets, 1 Mud Dragon, 1 Earth Golem at Ignister, 1 Starving Venom, 1 Trifio Verdum. These are the pretty standard ones. And then Blazing Vortex gave us Cordius. That's what we're going with. He's pretty cool. You can make him versus Virtual World pretty easy because they might make VFD and QB, and you can just make Artemis and then Super Poly, or make Verte and then actually have Super Poly. So yeah, you can make him. And I just kind of want to play him because he's very cool and we have the space, and I don't know if I'll ever get to play him otherwise except for this deck. So that is the extra deck. Sorry about the proxies, but yeah, I just hope people were listening with their volume on, I guess. So that they don't know why, or they're not confused as to why I had face down sleeves. On the side deck, there's definitely, you can adjust the side deck for your locals. I'm just going to get into it. 3 Droll for Invoke Dog, Dinosaur, and then mostly Dogmatica, most obvious, or not Dogmatica, Drytron, most obviously. Yeah, that deck's just obviously super, super good, so we need to side for it. And then 2 Secret Village and a Terraforming for more spell-heavy decks when I know I'm going first. Yeah, this card is just such an insane floodgate, so we're going to maximize its copies in the side deck for when we go first. No Metaverse. It's a trap, and I don't need that many Secret Village. We run Prosperity, so we have a good chance to see it anyways. 3 Shared Ride. It's a good go first card. It's kind of like Droll in a way, except we're just going to draw cards instead. Most importantly, it's a spell, so if we draw it going first and we don't have anything else, at worst it's a spell, which is why I choose to play it in this deck. Then 1 Super Poly and 1 Dark Ruler. These are just the second copies of the main deck copies. I can either side out a Super Poly for the second Dark Ruler or vice versa based on the matchup, or have 2 and 2 for going second. 1 Feather Duster, pretty obvious. One of our best ways to clear back row decks, and 3 Evenly Matched is kind of also for back row decks, but also just a great go second card. So that was the Witchcrafter deck profile. I hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, what you would do different, how you feel about Spell Chronicle as a card, whether you would want to play it or not. I'd be interested to read your comments and, hopefully respond to you. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, and peace.